At Branch 4 of Harlow and Finch Bank in Midtown, the ceiling lights had barely flickered on when Evelyn Monroe's wheelchair appeared at the edge of the curb. The automatic glass doors hadn't fully opened yet. Cold, gray-white light spilled out and reflected off her face. Evelyn's eyes were unreadable. Her chestnut-colored suit was tailored in a classic cut. The collar buttoned all the way up. No lipstick, no handbag, just a sealed envelope resting on her lap. Her dark hands, unadorned by jewelry, were quietly folded. No one knew who she was, and that was by design. A receptionist named Haley happened to walk past the glass doors, just as Evelyn pushed herself silently into the lobby. Haley didn't even glance her way, just tossed a phrase into the air like a cold slap. "Good morning. Please wait in the guest seating area. We don't begin transactions until 9. Evelyn nodded. Said nothing. She rolled toward the waiting area without a sound. Black leather seats, white tile floors. The soft hum of the air filtration system mixed with the faint scent of glass cleaner. A security guard passed by, looked down at the wheelchair, then looked away. Evelyn quietly approached the information desk. Haley was still there, now adjusting her lipstick using her phone's reflection. Her bleached blonde hair was pulled into a ponytail, and her posture spoke of someone who had once been a high school cheerleader, now drained by Monday mornings. "Excuse me," Evelyn said. Her voice was even, low, steady. "I'd like to speak with the branch manager." Haley glanced up, barely half a second, then turned back to her phone. "Did you schedule an appointment?" "No." "Then you'll need to fill out a request form. Someone will follow up with you by the weekend. This matter needs to be addressed in person." Haley paused. She set her phone down and leaned slightly over the desk like she was talking to a confused elderly woman. "Are you trying to make a withdrawal or a transfer?" "No." "Then I'm afraid it's not a transaction." Evelyn cut her off. Not loudly, but with surgical precision. Her tone held no fear, no uncertainty. Haley squinted, then gave a short laugh. "People like you usually show up when your cards are blocked or there's some dispute. But the manager is busy. We don't just pull him out for random walk-ins." The lobby remained quiet, but the keystrokes of two tellers started to slow. A woman in nurse scrubs standing nearby to sign a document turned her head. She didn't say anything, but her eyes were locked in. "Do you have any ID?" Haley asked with a sigh, no longer bothering to hide her irritation. Evelyn slowly opened the leather pouch on her lap. She pulled out a sealed envelope, but didn't hand it over. "This is for the branch manager only," Haley sneered. "Do you even understand how our branch policies work? I'm the one who screens visitors. I'm not calling the director out just because someone showed up waving a mystery envelope." She tapped her nails on the counter. The clack, clack sounded like metal on porcelain. "I suggest you come back another time. For the first time." Evelyn looked her directly in the eye. Not with aggression, but with the calm weight of someone who had buried dreams and endured her dignity being stepped on more than once. "That's all right," she said. "I can wait." She turned her chair slightly, but didn't leave the lobby. She tucked the envelope back into her pouch, folded her hands as before. She didn't check a watch. She didn't pull out a phone. She just waited. Haley returned to texting on her phone. One message, then another. A male employee, slim, brown-skinned. Name tag, reading Marcus, walked by. He stopped when he met Evelyn's eyes. There was no plea in them, no anger, just something familiar, something known. He gave her a small nod. Evelyn nodded back. Marcus approached the counter. "Is something wrong?" "No." Haley replied quickly. "Just some random visitor. No appointment. Insists on seeing the manager." "Did she hand you something?" Marcus asked, lowering his voice. "Nope. Just clutching it like she's about to sue someone." Haley shot another glance at Evelyn. "I've seen this kind before. Usually got turned away at some smaller branch. Now they come up here to stir the pot. Marcus turned gently to Evelyn. Ma'am, is there something I can help you with? Evelyn looked at him, then reached for the envelope. Do you have clearance to hand this to the branch director? Marcus nodded and took it from her. He hadn't even opened it yet when the bank's internal chime system let out 3 low tones. Nobody else in the lobby reacted. But Marcus did. He looked down at his screen. In bold red text, branch ATL4. Temporarily suspended. Violation of operational protocol. Haley stared at him. What does that mean? Marcus swallowed. His eyes scanned the rest of the alert. Then he looked back at Evelyn. His face went pale. You're Monroe. Evelyn didn't respond. She simply placed her hand on her wheel and turned to face the center of the lobby. Sunlight from the skylight caught the dark glass behind her, casting her in a stark silhouette. Haley froze. She took a half step back, confused. She didn't understand what had just happened, but the entire bank system did. The door to the branch manager's office swung open. The man who stepped out from the glass door, framed in oak wood, was Richard King, branch manager of Harlow and Finch. Midtown Division. 48 years old, tall, wearing a crisp white shirt with perfect creases, a silver gray tie, and Oxford shoes polished to a boardroom sheen. He looked at ease, at least until his eyes landed on Marcus, who stood frozen like someone caught between 2 worlds, holding a brown leather envelope unopened. What's going on here? Richard asked calmly, still in that polished customer service tone. Haley spoke first. Some stranger demanding to see you. No appointment. No explanation. Told Marcus to deliver some kind of weird letter. Richard looked at Marcus. The young man said nothing, but when he extended the envelope, his hand trembled slightly. Richard took it, frowning just a bit. Who gave this to you? Marcus didn't turn his head. He just tilted his chin slightly toward Evelyn, the woman sitting silently, exactly 10 steps away, unmoving. Richard turned, and then he froze. The skylight above cast a pale blue hue over Evelyn's silver hair. Her face was unreadable, as if she hadn't come to talk, but simply to witness. Evelyn Monroe, Richard murmured, almost to himself. Evelyn gave a slight nod. There was no handshake, no invitation to his office. None of the formalities Richard usually deployed when courting investors. He opened the envelope. Read the first line. His lips pressed tight. Blood-red text, bold and clear. Internal Ethics Investigation, Authorization, Level 2. Warning signed Evelyn L. Monroe, Chairwoman. Board of Financial Oversight, H&F Holdings. No one heard Richard's breath hitch, but his shoulders dropped. Just enough for Marcus and the whole lobby to realize something had just slipped out of control. May I speak with you in your office? Evelyn asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Yet it chilled the air. Richard snapped out of it. Of course. Of course. Ms. Monroe. Haley stood frozen. Her fingers gripped the desk edge tightly, veins rising. She didn't know whether to step forward or backward. Marcus avoided her gaze. The branch manager's office sat at the end of the hallway, fully soundproof. Evelyn rolled forward, her wheelchair making the softest hum, like the ticking of an old clock. When the door closed behind them, no one in the lobby spoke. The staff felt paralyzed. They didn't fully understand, but they felt it. Something bigger, silent, unpretentious had just entered a space normally dominated by loud voices and expensive suits. Inside, Richard poured water. His hand still shook slightly. Evelyn didn't touch the glass. The last time I came to this branch was 7 years ago. Evelyn said, back then. It had only 4 teller windows, a shabby lobby, beds and mold on the walls. We've improved a lot since then, Richard tried to smile, and failed. This branch is now one of the top performing in the eastern region. But your staffing hasn't. The remark wasn't loud. It wasn't scolding. But it landed like a verdict. Ms. Monroe, I truly apologize if any of my staff acted inappropriately. I don't know what happened, but I'm sure I can explain. Evelyn tilted her head slightly. What do you assume? When a person in a wheelchair, wearing an old suit, requests to see the manager, holding a sealed envelope with a red stamp, could be a troubled customer, Richard said softly, or maybe a banker. He didn't answer. Evelyn opened her pouch and pulled out another document. She handed it over. This is a record of anonymous complaints filed at this branch over the past 18 months about how your reception staff treat elderly clients, people of color, and disabled customers. Richard didn't take the paper because he knew it was real. Are you planning to shut down the branch? He asked. No, he exhaled. I've worked too long building this institution, Evelyn said. I won't destroy it. I'm just correcting its course. Richard looked up. I want the system to understand that wearing a suit isn't what gives someone worth. And not everyone in a wheelchair is asking for help. Some are here to see who's worth keeping. The sentence ended in silence, the kind that follows truth, when there's nothing left to add outside. Haley opened her phone. She typed a message to a friend. Some weird old woman just showed up. Everything's frozen. Boss locked in meeting. It's bad. Then deleted it. Then typed again. Who is she? I might seriously lose my job. Marcus glanced over. He didn't speak. But for the first time, he didn't avoid her eyes either. Back inside the office, Richard removed his glasses and wiped his face. I will temporarily suspend all customer service operations and submit a formal report to the board before the end of the day. Evelyn said simply, in 3 minutes, the automated system will disable this branch's transactional authority. Unless I issue a recovery order, all operations will remain sealed for 24 hours of personnel audit. Richard said nothing more. He understood. She hadn't come to speak. She came to prove that real power doesn't need recognition, only timing. The Midtown branch of Harlow and Finch emitted 3 low beeps. No error alert. No cyber attack. Just a kind of signal no one had ever heard before. Every computer screen flicked to access suspended. Every transaction froze mid-command. Every call to tech support ended with a busy tone. Marcus stood up from his station. Haley stood frozen. Brenda, who worked in the credit records department, tried to re-enter her password 3 times, then shakily yanked her ID card from the reader like it had been cursed. No one spoke, because no one understood what was happening. All they knew was a black woman in a wheelchair had been invited into the branch manager's office, and the entire banking system went silent less than 10 minutes later. Inside that office, Richard King had just put down the phone. Sweat glistened along his hairline. Evelyn Monroe sat unmoving, her fingers folded neatly in her lap. The message he had just received was from H&F's Central Executive Board. It read, comply with all demands from Monroe. Maintain current state. No response. 12 words. No punctuation. No explanation. No signature. But enough to crush any form of resistance. Richard clenched his jaw. You coordinated this in advance. Evelyn's lips curved faintly. I don't make appointments when I'm the one who writes the schedule. He wanted to ask more, but held his tongue, because deep down, he knew this was no longer a conversation. It was an evaluation, and he was failing 1 point at a time. Outside. Marcus was called into the office. He knocked gently. Evelyn signaled with her eyes. Richard nodded. He was the only one in this branch who responded appropriately. Evelyn said, flatly, Richard looked at Marcus, but not in the usual managerial tone. "What did you do?" Marcus swallowed. "I just handed over the envelope," Evelyn added. "And didn't ask why. It wasn't a compliment. It was something else, a silent acknowledgement. The kind only people who've been treated like furniture, like air, can truly understand." "How long have you been in this industry?" Evelyn asked. 6 years, ma'am." "Has anyone ever invited you to a strategic planning meeting?" Marcus hesitated. "No, ma'am." Evelyn turned to Richard. "I want him appointed as interim supervisor of customer relations until our review is complete." Richard started to protest, then stopped. His hand was still shaking, and those 12 words still burned like a red-inked seal in the back of his mind. As Marcus stepped out of the office, Haley followed him immediately. "What the hell is going on?" she asked, her voice finally dropping from its usual tone. Marcus looked at her not with spite, not with triumph, just with the calm of someone who had just seen what she never thought could happen. "I think," he said slowly, "she's the one person you should never say no appointment, no meeting to." Haley opened her mouth, but no words came out. For the first time, she realized her voice was no longer assumed to be the one people listened to. The Midtown branch of Harlow and Finch was officially marked as temporarily suspended in the H&F Holdings command panel. Reason: suspected violation of anti-discrimination protocols. Under investigation. At H&F headquarters in Chicago. The head of human resources received Monroe's internal report. Over the next 18 months, every staff member named would be reevaluated not just on performance, but on how they perceived a human being who hadn't walked through the door the right way. Back at the branch, a coffee clerk entered the lobby with a steaming pot. Ready to do her early rounds, she stopped. Everyone looked frozen. She turned to the security guard. "Is this some kind of drill?" He shook his head. "No, this is real." Inside the office, Evelyn stood. She didn't ask for help. "I'm leaving now," she said. "I've seen enough." Richard stepped in her way, but not to block her, more like someone seeking clarity from a judge. "What do you plan to do?" Next, Evelyn glanced at the floor. The dark marble tiles reflected the shape of her wheels, like a question mark. "Sometimes," she said, "you don't need to act. You just let people see what they've been trying to hide, and let them decide whether they want to keep it." The words dropped like lead, and Richard King realized he hadn't just lost a Monday morning transaction. He had lost the right to command trust. The bank's automatic glass doors slid open. A breeze swept in from 47th Street, lifting the hem of a customer's skirt as she stood puzzled over a home loan form. But the silence that fell across the lobby wasn't for her. It was for the black woman in the wheelchair, exiting without an escort, without a goodbye, without so much as a glance back. Evelyn Monroe glided across the marble like the floor had rolled out a red carpet just for her. No one dared to speak. Only Marcus, still at his station, watched her go. She looked at him. No smile, just a nod. A quiet nod, but one deeper than any spoken thank you. Marcus nodded back. He didn't know what had just begun. He only knew something had just ended. Behind them, the first sound came from HR. Brenda, the one who always bragged about her overtime hours, sat frozen, staring at her laptop screen, where the message still blinked. Access denied. Session terminated by corporate compliance. Someone in the lobby clicked their tongue, almost chuckling, but didn't. Not out of fear, but because no one knew who would be next. A system doesn't collapse with noise. It simply stops answering. Haley hadn't moved. Her back seemed fused to her chair. She looked out the glass doors. Evelyn had already vanished beyond the corner. Then she looked back at Marcus, now calmly picking up a pen that had rolled off the counter. Composed, as if 6 years of being overlooked hadn't cracked a single piece of him. A strange feeling crept over her. Not shame, not fear, but the unfamiliar sense of becoming smaller in a way that no apology could fix. Richard King stood in his office, watching his phone vibrate nonstop. Calls from HQ, from HR, from legal counsel. But he didn't pick up. Because one truth had landed heavier than them all. Evelyn Monroe didn't need to raise her voice. She just needed to show up, and the entire machine would begin to examine itself. He walked slowly to the window and looked down at the lobby. No one looked up. No one waited for instructions. And that was the most terrifying part. An internal email went out to all Midtown branch employees. Freeze. All internal approval processes. All staffing actions, pending oversight. Board review. Chief Legal Officer Brenda read the email, then turned toward Haley. No words, just a look. A look sharper than accusation. A look that said, "It started with you, and now everyone will remember your name because of it." A middle-aged man entered quietly from the rear exit. No uniform, no name tag. But the moment he stepped in, people instinctively cleared a path. Martin Chambers, Regional Special Supervisor, a name only heard during high-level investigations. Chambers stopped at Marcus's desk. "You, Marcus." Marcus looked up. "Yes. Can you step into the branch manager's office?" Marcus frowned slightly. "I'm just a customer service rep." Chambers shook his head. "As of this morning, you've been appointed interim representative by directive of CEO Evelyn Monroe. All next steps go through you." Haley grabbed her handbag. There was no termination notice, no warning. But no one needed to say it. A woman, waiting to submit a mortgage application, rose from her seat. She looked at Haley, then silently stepped back. Not in anger, just stepping away from someone who'd been exposed. Haley stood at the threshold, looked back one last time. But Marcus didn't look. No one did. She walked out, leaving behind an empty chair and a business card with her name still on it. Marcus sat down in the chair Haley had occupied for the past 2 years. He placed his hands on the desk, said nothing. He simply looked around the room like someone who had just entered a house that had forgotten him for a decade. There was no need to change everything. Just start seeing people, with a gaze they'd never known here before. A gaze that didn't seek validation, didn't carry revenge, only served one purpose, to remind them who was truly worth listening to. The conference room at the end of the west hallway, once used by Richard King for his internal strategy sessions, no longer had anyone seated at the head of the table. There was no chair of authority, no printed folders, no slideshow queued up, just a blank whiteboard, and 7 staff members scattered around the long oak table, none daring to pull out a chair. Marcus hadn't told them to stand. But no one sat in front of the man who had existed quietly inside this very space without ever being acknowledged. Marcus walked in, as silently as always. But this time, he didn't stay in the corner. He walked straight to the far end of the table where Richard used to sit, and did not sit down, even though a guest wheelchair had been placed nearby. He stood his hands resting on the table's edge. "I won't take long," Marcus began. His voice was quiet, but the entire room forgot to breathe. "Because I'm not here to lecture. I just want to share a small story." He lifted his gaze, letting his eyes meet each person in the room. Not accusing, but clear. "I've seen you 3 years ago. I helped an elderly man fill out a form after he was denied service for not understanding financial jargon. Afterward, I got written up for overstepping support boundaries. Someone in this room signed that report. No one moved. And 1 year ago," Marcus continued, "I was moved from my station because a client didn't want to be served by someone who couldn't walk more than 3 steps. He smiled. Just a little. But there was no humor in it. You remember. Don't you? HR stayed silent. Because the customer is always right. And I was just someone without enough spine to object. No one could meet his eyes. But today, Marcus paused. I'm not here for revenge. He reached into his breast pocket and pulled out a folded slip of paper. I've been granted temporary supervisory authority over this team during the audit. I could recommend reassignments or terminations, but he laid the paper flat on the table and opened. Power doesn't come from your job title. It comes from the choices you make. When you're no longer afraid of losing your job. He stepped back, picked up a plain chair from the wall, and sat down for the first time. I choose forgiveness, but not forgetfulness. The sentence fell across the room, like the final knock on a sealed door. No defense, no rebuttals. None needed. Because when silence is used correctly, it is far more terrifying than any formal accusation. Marcus returned to the front desk. Same spot. Same small nameplate. But this time, when a customer stepped forward, everyone else paused. The customer, an older white woman, greeted him with a gentle look, then said softly, I can tell this bank, it's different now. Marcus nodded. We're still learning. But yes, as of today, it's different. Outside, the sun rose higher. No protest signs, no news vans, no shouting. Just a world quietly beginning to fix itself. Evelyn never returned. But her empty chair, her unsaid words, her final glance, they stayed behind, etched into every tile, every file folder, every good morning. How can I help you? A new employee entered later that week. They glanced around, then noticed a small sticky note taped behind the office printer. It read, How you treat the ones who need nothing from you is how they'll remember you forever. There was no signature, but everyone knew exactly who it was from.